The robot pushed trash into its body. After compressing it with force, it turned into a solid cube. It was the last garbage-collecting robot on Earth. Alone, it had been working for 700 years. At first, it only collected trash, but after hundreds of years, it slowly developed awareness. It began to learn, using trash to build tall structures. It believed that if all the trash was cleared, humans would return to Earth, and it would no longer feel so lonely. But there was simply too much trash. It could never finish it alone, and its companions had all broken down, with no one to repair them. Now the only thing keeping it company was a resilient cockroach. After a full day of work, Wall-E returned to his small home. He loved being clean. Before entering, he would hang his shoes aside. Then he took out a tape and played his favorite music. After that, he sorted the items he found. The cube went with others of the same color, and the strange spoon-like fork did not fit anywhere, so it stayed in the middle. Finally, there was a lighter. Wall-E opened his collection box, which was already filled with many lighters. After finishing everything, he watched his favorite romantic movie. Each time he was deeply moved by human love. He longed to have a companion. His little hands slowly came together. At night when he slept, he folded into a small box, and his collection case became his bed. Like a child, he gently rocked himself to sleep. The next morning, a low battery alert woke him up. He dragged his tired body to the door, put on his shoes, then went to the rooftop to recharge for 180 days. After being fully powered, he began his daily routine once again. The robot found something that looked like an eye patch. It looked pretty cool when worn, so it decided to take it home. Then it found a large diamond ring, but it was not interested in the ring. Instead, it liked the box more. After that, it discovered a strange container. After cutting it open with a laser, inside was a plant it had never seen before. Wall-E carefully placed it into a shoe and brought it back home. But just as it reached the door, it was attracted by a strange red dot. Like a cat, it chased the laser and came to a wide open area. Suddenly, a huge spaceship descended from the sky. It hid nearby and watched as the ship released a delicate robot. With just one look, Wall-E fell deeply in love with the pure white robot. Eve was sent by humans to Earth to check for signs of life. But once the ship left, she started to play, flying freely across the ground. Her graceful movements fascinated Wall-E. Suddenly, she knocked over a rock. Hearing the sound, Eve immediately fired a powerful laser, frightening Wall-E. Eve scanned around the city, while Wall-E hid far away, too scared to approach. The cockroach decided to help, but Eve noticed it and fired again. However, the cockroach was resilient. After realizing it was harmless, Eve began to play with it. This made Wall-E laugh. Eve, with high alertness, immediately fired several shots toward him. Wall-E shrank into a box in fear. Then Eve flew closer and scanned him, after confirming he was not a threat. But Wall-E wanted to be friends, yet he did not dare to approach, so he carefully followed behind her. Even a simple glance from Eve made Wall-E feel overwhelmed with excitement. He followed her all day, until night when she entered standby. Only then did he quietly approach. He picked up trash and made a sculpture overnight. Unfortunately, Eve showed no interest. She kept scanning objects, unable to find any sign of life. Eve became a bit frustrated. While passing a scrapyard, she was accidentally pulled by a magnet. Angry, she fired wildly, turning the area into flames. Then she stood there feeling down. Seeing her sadness, Wall-E finally gathered courage to approach. This time, Eve did not leave. Instead, she asked about his directive. Wall-E quickly demonstrated his work. Then they introduced their names. Before they could continue, a strong sandstorm suddenly arrived. At that moment, Wall-E grabbed her hand and brought her back to his home. For the first time, Wall-E lit up all his lights, excitedly showing his collections. He even brought out bubble wrap, but in less than 2 seconds, he popped them all. Even the complex puzzle cube was solved instantly by her. Wall-E happily turned on the TV and played his favorite romance film, then tried to invite her to dance. But Eve only moved casually, almost shaking the house apart, if not dancing then spinning. But her speed was too fast. Wall-E was thrown against the wall, almost getting stuck there, even damaging one of his eyes. Luckily, Wall-E had spare parts and replaced it with a new one. At that moment, Eve picked up a small metal piece. It turned out to be a lighter. Wall-E finally understood how to use it. Under the glow of the flame, Eve looked beautiful. He bravely tried to hold her hand, but she avoided him, leaving Wall-E awkwardly drawing circles on the ground. He bravely tried to hold her hand, but Eve avoided him. Wall-E could only awkwardly draw circles on the ground, but he did not give up. He remembered the plant he found earlier. Seeing his clumsy behavior, Eve could not help but smile. Wall-E handed the plant to her. After scanning it, she realized it was the life form she had been searching for. Suddenly, she twitched and absorbed the plant into her body. Then she powered down into standby mode. No matter how much Wall-E called or touched her, she did not respond. Wall-E thought she had run out of power, so he took her to the rooftop to recharge in the sun. Even in heavy rain, he stayed by her side with an umbrella. Even when struck by lightning, he did not step back. Even during sandstorms, he protected her with a metal barrel. Wall-E tried to open her charging port, but before connecting the cable, he was pushed away by her defense system. Even though she was unresponsive, Wall-E never thought about giving up. Afraid she would feel lonely, he used colorful lights to take her around. They sailed in a small boat through a smelly canal. He used a laser to carve. Wall-E loves Eve onto a trash bin. They watched the sunset together from high above, all while waiting for the day she would wake up. Since Eve shut down, Wall-E became listless. He no longer cared about the work he had done for hundreds of years. At that moment the spaceship returned. By the time Wall-E realized something was wrong, Eve had already been taken away. Luckily he climbed onto the ship before it left, and followed it out of the atmosphere. Looking back, the Earth had lost its blue color. After traveling through space, Wall-E arrived at a giant spaceship. Everything was controlled by an intelligence system. It detected the green signal inside Eve. She was placed on a stretcher and taken out of storage. Wall-E followed closely behind. Outside there were robots and humans. Humans could no longer walk, and relied on robots for everything. With a simple command, their clothes could change color. Wall-E followed the stretcher to the captain's room. The captain ordered Eve to be activated. These humans were descendants who left Earth 700 years ago. Every 3 years they sent probes. If signs of life were found, it meant Earth could be restored, and they could return soon. Wall-E tapped Eve. She looked at him and realized he had followed her. Eve became flustered and told him to hide. At that moment the captain requested to see the plant, but after checking, the plant was missing. The captain felt relieved. Everything could go back to normal. They did not need to rush home. Thinking Eve malfunctioned, the captain ordered her to be sent for repair. Wall-E followed her, but was locked in the malfunction area. Seeing Eve taken into the repair zone, he became anxious, unable to see clearly through the barrier. What was meant to be routine maintenance looked like disassembly to him. When he saw her head removed, Wall-E could not stay calm. He cut open the barrier with a laser and rushed forward, grabbing Eve's arm. In panic the arm misfired and hit the control panel. All the malfunctioning robots escaped. They saw Wall-E as their savior. This caused both of them to be labeled as threats. They became wanted robots. At that moment Eve lost her temper again. Seeing the wanted notice, she blasted the screen instantly. Wall-E was so shocked, she turned into a box. They made their way to the control room. She opened the hatch planning to send Wall-E back to Earth. A clueless Wall-E went inside, then sat down obediently. Even patted the seat, but Eve still had a mission and could not leave. Seeing this, Wall-E started acting stubborn. He turned himself into a small box in front of her. At that moment a security robot walked in. They hid in the shadows and watched. The security robot took out a plant and dropped it on the ground, then pressed the activation button, and quickly left. Suddenly Wall-E rushed in, picked up the plant trying to please Eve. The next second the hatch slammed shut. The ship was instantly launched. Eve quickly flew after it. Inside the ship Wall-E panicked, trying to control it. In 20 seconds the ship would self-destruct. At the critical moment, Wall-E grabbed a fire extinguisher and frantically hit the hatch. Eve was speeding toward him, but the ship suddenly exploded. Just as Eve fell into despair, Wall-E floated toward her holding the fire extinguisher. He took out the plant and handed it to Eve. Eve happily accepted it. She even hugged Wall-E and kissed him. Wall-E instantly lost himself in the moment. Then they returned to the space station and handed the plant to the captain. To understand the current situation on Earth, the captain pulled up Eve's recordings. Unexpectedly they were filled with images of Wall-E. Wall-E had given his all, his actions full of love for her. Eve felt his care and warmth. At that moment she understood the meaning of holding hands. But unexpectedly, their plan to return to Earth was blocked by Otto. Because humans would no longer be controlled by robots, it activated the highest authority, placed the captain under house arrest, and damaged Wall-E before throwing him into the trash disposal chute. Then Eve was also thrown in. A mouse accidentally activated a robot. When they woke up they were already in a waste processing plant. After regaining consciousness, Eve found a barely functioning Wall-E. His circuit board was severely burned. Even then he still tried to hand the plant to Eve. But now Eve did not care about the plant at all. She tossed it aside. Wall-E in front of her was what mattered most. Wall-E seemed to have another idea. He dragged his damaged body forward, picked up the plant and handed it to Eve, then took out a lighter, and moved his eyes slightly. Eve suddenly realized his spare parts were on Earth. To save time, Eve carried Wall-E and rushed forward, crashing through everything in her path. At that moment the captain saw the wanted alert, and the plant in Eve's hands. He secretly connected to the external screen, and started a live broadcast telling Eve to place the plant directly into the hollow detector. All the humans were gathered in the plaza. Just as the plant was about to be placed, the ship suddenly tilted. The plant in Eve's hand was thrown away. Otto tried to take the chance to shut down the detector. At the critical moment, Wall-E used his broken body to brace himself under the detector. Seeing this, Otto forcefully pressed the button. Unable to hold on, Wall-E was crushed flat. Seeing all this, the captain was filled with anger. He struggled to get up from the ground, fought bravely against Otto, and successfully shut it down while stabilizing the ship. Eve also successfully placed the plant into the detector. The ship instantly restarted. After 700 years, humanity finally achieved their long-awaited goal. As the jump ended, the ship carried humans back to their long-lost Earth. Eve held Wall-E and rushed back to his home, then replaced his circuit board with a used one as quickly as possible. Finally, she opened the skylight to fully charge him. Wall-E successfully powered back on, but after waking up he seemed completely blank. All memories of Eve appeared to be gone. Even his favorite items were treated as trash and compressed into cubes. Eve lowered her head in sadness. She held his hand and leaned in again, giving him a hug. Just as she was about to leave, suddenly her hand was tightly held. No matter what, she could not pull away. It turned out Wall-E was an older model and just processed information a bit slower. The old Wall-E had returned. At the end of the story, the captain planted that precious seedling, and a new chapter of human civilization began.